What's up, beautiful people? Today we're going to be listening to a speech by the Russian Foreign Minister, Lavrov. He's saying, and I think this is in quotes, the era of Western domination is coming to an end. Let's get to it.
I would like to ask you the following question. Russia has been under Western sanctions for several years now. How does our country cope with this? And what foreign partners are helping us with this? Thanks a lot. Well, today we have already partially touched on this topic. You need to deal with this, relying only on yourself. Built on sand are the hopes of those who lament over the collapse of our relations with Western colleagues. That everything will someday return to the way it was before. The line of the West, the course that they proclaimed with the aim of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia. It will not disappear anywhere in the foreseeable future, and we understand this very well, and, in any case, even if suddenly, by some incomprehensible command from above, the West suggests that we return to more or less normal contacts, then we will already think whether we need to do this, and, if we need it, then in what areas. We will not cooperate with the West in those areas on which our security depends in every sense. Both military and political security, and economic, and technological, and so on. This has already been proven by the experience of the last 30 years. The West, without hesitation, at any moment when it wants to restrain our own development. And this is precisely their goal. To restrain the development of competitors. It will abuse all the agreements that have been reached. None of the fundamental agreements that we entered into with the West after 1991 have been fulfilled, none. Therefore, we cannot trust their words, nor can one trust the signatures that the West put on numerous documents. We overcome difficulties. Of course, they are. And they are obvious. Nobody can argue with this. They are significant. And they will continue to worsen. As far as one can judge from the statistics, our government, under the leadership of the president, who regularly holds meetings on various sectoral issues related to the economic development of the country, is doing everything possible. And these efforts are yielding positive results. We have reduced unemployment. We do not have a shortage of goods, in general. We expect
We have reduced unemployment and we do not have a shortage of goods. So even with the sanctions, seems they are thriving. Russians, tell us, how is it going?
Tangible economic growth. Given the circumstances in which we provide it, and we see that new projects are being implemented in the field of investment, in the field of transport. Moreover, these projects will link us more closely with those countries whose decency and negotiability we have no doubts about. First of all, these are our eastern and southern neighbors. We have already seen many times the non-negotiability and dishonesty of the West, and our conclusion is clear. When they want, then we will look and decide if we need it, and if we need it, then in what areas and to what extent. We have plans and specific figures for developing cooperation with the People's Republic of China, with India, with the United Arab Emirates, with Iran, and with Saudi Arabia. Now I'm just afraid of offending someone. I can't list everyone. There are plans with many African countries, especially with the states of North Africa. These plans are concrete, they are realistic, and they are already yielding impressive results in terms of increasing trade turnover, increasing investment and contacts in other areas, including cultural, humanitarian, and sports ties. What is happening now in the International Olympic Committee, in general, is a mockery of common sense, of the Olympic Charter, and our president also spoke on this subject. Still, this forces us to look for other forms of development of an independent, depoliticized, honestly competitive sport. This is true. So when you see a goal, and when you achieve it, then you always get success. Your institute teaches exactly this approach to life. Thanks a lot. At the Moscow Conference on International Security, you mentioned the process of becoming a more just and sustainable world order, as well as the gradual de-dollarization of the world economy and trade. How long would it take for these trends to spread around the world? And what can prevent this? Well, this is probably a question for a doctoral dissertation. Because it is impossible to predict these processes.
Right, I was just gonna say the same thing. Yeah, even people in America who's been studying these cases, they're saying it's difficult to predict, but also they believe it's not even close that this wouldn't happen in the near future. Now, even though people say it might not happen in the near future, it's a push in advancement, which means it's going to happen eventually.
This is not the rotation of the Earth, which is subject to the laws of astronomy. And these are not other processes in the field of exact sciences. Much depends on the role of the individual in history. From whether there is a certain personality at the head of a state, bright or gray. You see daily in television reports and on the internet how many individuals who have led this or that state make decisions solely at perpetuating their dominance, as they believe. But there are individuals who understand the need to combine efforts, who understand that there are a large number of risks and threats for all of humanity, and that these risks can only be dealt with together, developing methods to overcome them that will meet the interests of all, so that it does not work out like with the green transition, which in the European Union was declared the main task of the day. They began to reduce investments in the extraction of hydrocarbons. They even began to abandon nuclear energy. Then the wind did not blow as it should, the tides were not very strong, the sun did not shine much, and now they are clearing it all up. Moreover, they continue to force the countries of Africa and other countries of the third world, but especially Africa, to accelerate the transition to this green economy. Although they themselves have long exceeded all previous indicators in terms of coal consumption. African countries, in response to this, say that something needs to be done with the climate and take these changes into account. Although nothing has been 100% proven, but they remind that if the West wants them to be engaged in the green transition now, then let's go back to the promises that were made about 8 years ago at one of the conferences. Then the West signed a commitment to allocate $100 billion a year to help developing countries to implement the green transition. None of this was done. When we met within the framework of BRICS, many colleagues recalled this and compared these promises to allocate $100 billion annually. These promises were simply forgotten. We compared this with the figures
Forgotten or neglected. Seems like we've seen a lot of those
that characterize Western assistance to Ukraine over the past year and a half. Well, I think everyone understands what is at stake. So, now in Western countries, gradually and not very loudly, but more and more, sober voices are heard calling for compromises, for agreements that will take into account the interests both in the field of security and in the field of the economy of all states without exception, to refuse dictatorship, which has never led to anything good. For example, they say they will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. At the BRICS summit, we discussed this with colleagues in an informal setting. They asked me, how long, in my opinion, will the West be able to defend Ukraine so that it wins on the battlefield? I replied that I could not guess. But there are examples in history. Look how long it took them in Iraq, in Afghanistan to achieve their goals. I think the answer is clear here. Therefore, building a foreign policy on the basis of slogans, and such aggressive slogans, is a road to nowhere. Rather, this is the path to war, which we are now seeing in various regions of the world. But, as I said above, the process is unstoppable. This is an objective course of history. How long it will last is hard to say. Everyone thought that the era of Western dominance would be eternal. But it lasted about 500 years. Now it's coming to an end. So, this process has deep historical roots from the point of view of old thinking. And now it reflects the objective reality from the point of view that new centers of power have appeared that no longer want to play the role of an object of international cooperation, who do not want the old principle of the colonialists to live at the expense of others applied to them. For example, in Africa, the issue of processing those natural resources with which it is endowed by God and nature is becoming more and more urgent, and loud voices were heard at the Russia-Africa Summit and the BRICS Summit that Africa no longer wants to simply supply minerals that will be processed somewhere in Europe, in other Western countries, and then all the profits, all the added value will go to Africans. We will assist these processes, but, I repeat once again, it cannot be ruled out that somewhere someone will come to power with intentions that do not at all correspond to historical trends. Thank you very much for the answer.
So I'm taking their words for it. Russia and Putin said the same thing, that they would assist Africa in corporations, even with technology, production, manufacturing. He even mentioned AI too, that they're willing to share their technology, their AI advancements with Africa. Lavrov is saying the same thing. Well, we're going to take their word for it, but time is going to tell. Hopefully this relationship and this partnership goes well for Africa, because Africa, we need to stop giving our natural resources and buying back the finished product or finished goods. We should start producing our thing from petroleum, cocoa, everything, gold. We should really start. Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso is looking to set up the whole refinement for gold and stuff. The company, I don't know what the right words or the right way they call the company, but he's trying to set that up in Burkina Faso so they don't have to export their gold and buy it back, because it doesn't make any sense. And also they have tomatoes. They have to export tomato and buy back the paste. Just put it in the blender or something. This is the end of this video. Smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
I made this bed on my own.